Hello friends, my name's Ariel Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at some track toys. Let's take a look at the first car today, which is the Ariel Atom V8, 475 horsepower, 1,433 pounds of weight. Now while this may not be the most powerful vehicle here today, or even the lightest, it does have by far and away the best power to weight ratio here, and that can pay dividends around a track like this. How does the Ariel Atom drive? Well, it drives pretty much as you would really expect from this car. It is scary, it is tricky. This is definitely not a car you can drive if you're sort of a first time driver. However, if you can get everything right in this vehicle, it is stupidly quick. There really isn't much that can go around a track quicker than Ariel Atom V8 when it's right in its comfort zone. When it comes to corner speed, you know, most race cars can't particularly keep up with the Atom on corner speed. Sure, you know, top line speed isn't going to be amazing in the Atom. It can only do about 170 miles per hour, but round a track like this, doesn't really matter. Acceleration, thanks to that power to weight ratio, is fantastic. Again, handling, once you get everything right, corner speed is just incredible. This car could be looking at the top of our leaderboard. Of course, you'll have to stay tuned until the end of the episode to find out whether it does make that jump or not. Anyways, next up we have the BAC Mono, 280 horsepower, 1,354 pounds of weight. This is actually the lightest vehicle we have here today. So while the BAC may not have the insane power of the Ariel Atom, that's not such a bad thing. You see, the Atom is a very hard to drive car, you know. It's so light and so powerful that, you know, you can get things wrong in a blink of an eye. In the BAC Mono, it's a lot more controlled. Now, admittedly, in the dry, this vehicle is very, very good indeed. In the wet, it isn't quite as good. I'm guessing it's down to maybe the tyres on this vehicle. Just, you know, they'll probably be slick-ish, road legal slicks. So they do struggle in the wet a little bit. This car will slide. There is a little bit of understeering there, just an inkling of it. But overall, the BAC Mono is pretty good. Again, I would recommend keeping this thing on dry tracks. On dry tracks, the BAC Mono is phenomenal. It really is one of the quickest ways to get around a track again. You know, this car is only top of A class. You know, the Ariel Atom is midway through R class, which is fair enough. BAC Mono, though, is only the top of A class, and this thing can really upset supercars when it comes to track. Speaking of upsetting supercars, next up, KTM X-Bow R, 295 horsepower, 1,786 pounds of weight. Of course, while it may have a little bit more power than the Mono, the X-Bow does weigh a little bit more. It's also down PI wise. This car is around A680, I believe, when it comes to its PI. However, the KTM, for me personally, is the better handling vehicle. I do really like the KTM X-Bow, actually. Every time I drive the KTM X-Bow, it really surprises me with just how much grip this thing has. It's probably my favourite of the track toys. You know, you've got your KTMs and so on. They aren't as easy to drive as this. If you want sort of a track car for beginners, the KTM is a great choice for you. In fact, it's probably the best in the game. Again, the Mono and the X-Bow are pretty similar matched. Of course, the KTM isn't quite as quick as the Mono. The Mono is a bit lighter, or quite a bit lighter actually when you consider it. But the X-Bow, for me personally, is the better driving car. I really, really like the X-Bow, to be honest with you. This is one of the better handling cars in the game, I will definitely say. That's much for the X-Bow. Next up, we have the Donkervoort D8 GTO, 365 horsepower, 1,532 pounds of weight. Now, you see that power figure, you look at the car, it kind of looks like a KTM, doesn't it? Yeah, it scared me initially as well. This thing has a turbocharged, modified inline 5 Audi engine, and a KTM has a 260 horsepower engine from a Ford Galaxy. Surprisingly enough though, the Donkervoort is a much more controllable car than a KTM. We had the KTM go around a good couple of weeks ago now, and that car was stupidly tricky to drive. You just could not stick the power down in that car. Surprisingly enough, the Donkervoort deals with the wet a lot better, which did surprise me. Admittedly, it is a much better car in the wet. In the dry, this thing is an absolute understeer machine. In the wet, it does understeer quite a bit as well. You know, it doesn't alleviate any of the understeer, but it's nowhere near as mad as the Caterham. You know, if it comes to a dry track, I would probably go with the Caterham over the Donkervoort, just because, while it may not be the easier car to drive, it's certainly the more bearable of the two. But round a wet track, there we go, the Donkervoort is the much better car. It is strangely good in the wet, and it really surprised me. Anyways, next up we move on to the car-derived track cars. Now what these are existing production cars which have just been tracked up a bit by their manufacturers, and the first one of today is the Dodge Viper ACR, 600 horsepower, 3,408 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful vehicle here today. It is also the heaviest by quite a fair margin. However, don't let that weight figure get in the way. The Viper ACR has a reputation for being an absolutely incredible car, and around the track today it was phenomenal. I love the Viper ACR. This is such an amazing car to drive because it's so weird. You still have that big 8.2 litre Viper engine which just sort of sits at the front and makes lots of noise, and you look at the wing and go, surely that can't hold the car to the track, and it just can. The Viper can take a ridiculous amount of corner speed. This thing upsets supercars. You know, this thing will upset pretty much any supercar you can throw at it when it comes to the cornering ability of this car. It is that good. It really is absolutely incredible. I do recommend the Viper ACR if you haven't tried it before. It only costs 110,000 credits. Seriously, go drive it, go drive it, go drive it. Stop the video. Well, actually no. Watch to the end of the video and then drive the Viper ACR. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Next up, in a similar vein, we have the Porsche 911 GT3 RS 4 litre, 500 horsepower, 2,998 pounds of weight. This has 100 less horsepower than the VipVap, however, it does weigh 400 pounds less, or just about. So, the 911 then, how does that handle? It's a great car. I've driven the GT3 RS a few times. I always kind of like the way the GT3 RS drives. I actually kind of like the 997 GT3 RS as well. I'm not a Porsche fan, but I do like this particular model of car. And every time I've driven the GT3, it's always been great. I reviewed this in Horizon 2 a fair old while back. Don't watch that review. But the 911 was very good in that, and in this game it is very good as well. I would definitely take this over the 911 Turbo S. Yes, the Turbo S has more power and four-wheel drive, but the GT3 is just so much better around the track. It's so much better to drive, you know. Between this and the Viper ACR, I have to go for the Viper. I just prefer the Viper. However, if you're looking at a track car that doesn't cost too much money and just handles, the GT3 would be a good shout. It really is a very, very good car, this, and I do recommend driving this one as well. Next up, Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale, 409 horsepower, 2,844 pounds of weight. Once again, we're about 100 horsepower down on the previous car, which was the 911, and weight-wise this time we're only down about 150 pounds. But the 360 Challenge Stradale is still a very good car. For some reason, this car just seems to get that little bit worse in each game it's in. In Forza 4, it was incredible. In Forza 5, it was pretty darn incredible. In 6, it does get a little bit overshadowed by some other cars that handle just as well. But the 360 Challenge Stradale is still very much worth a drive. It is a very good car, this. I really do quite like the 360 Challenge Stradale as well. I know people aren't huge on the Ferrari 360, you know, it's not one of the Ferraris people particularly like, but for me personally, I really do like the 360 Challenge Stradale an awful lot. It's a very good car. I do recommend giving it a drive, certainly. Very overlooked car, the 360, especially these days, you know, again, what with the Viper and the 911 and so on. It is very easy to overlook the Ferrari 360 CS, but it's totally worth a drive. It's a very good car. If you don't particularly like the way most modern Ferraris drive, check this one out. It really is a very good handling car. And finally today, I wanted to throw something completely different into here. So we have an Abarth 695 Biposto. However, this is still very much a track-ready Fiat 500. 186 horsepower, 2,198 pounds of weight. Power-wise, again, it is the least powerful vehicle here today, rather unsurprisingly. I mean, on any other given day, this would be by far and away the lightest car here, but it isn't because, well, there isn't that many, everything's light here today. The 695 Biposto, I did review this car a couple of months ago, and I found it to be excellent, and while driving it around here, I found it to be pretty excellent as well. Kind of similar to the BAC, the 695 does prefer the dry. I would definitely recommend driving the 695 Biposto in the dry over driving it in the wet. In the wet, you will find just a little bit more understeer creeping in, but you know, still the 695 is probably the best front wheel drive car in the game. It's incredible when it comes to its handling in this little car. It is amazing. It can run rings around some MX-5s with how well this thing takes to a track. It's a very, very good car indeed. I do recommend driving the Biposto. There's a lot of cars here I'd actually recommend driving today. In fact, to be fair, pretty much all of them are definitely worth a drive here today. They will surprise you, these little track toys. Sure, they may not have the most power, but they can certainly upset things with more power. And speaking of, the Ariel Atom V8 is our leader of today, going into first place with a 1:15.492. It's almost 3 seconds quicker than our previous leader, which was a 4:58 Speciale. Yeah, the Atom was insane. However, for me, the much more surprising of the cars here today was the Viper, which goes into 5th with a 1:19.049. It beats a GT3 RS, a Celine S7, a Lamborghini Murcielago, and McLaren F1. Yeah, the Viper was insane. BAC Mono goes into 9th, 1:19.983. Again, beats a McLaren F1, beats a bunch of supercars. Very good time from that, as is the KTM, going into 11th, 1:20.217. Just remember what I said about the PI, you know, most of these cars are A-class cars, and they're second times like that. It's incredible. 911 GT3 goes into 12th with a 1:20.473. Again, very, very good time. Beats a McLaren 12C, Corvette C7, 599 GTO, 911 Turbo S. It beats the 911 Turbo S by almost a second. I told you that's a better car to go with. The Donkervoort as well does pretty well, going into 21st with a 1:21.780, which is a very good time for that car, actually. Beats a Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera, which is cool. Moving down the board once again, we find the 360 Challenge Stradale in 28th for 1:22.760. Maybe not quite as impressive, but it does beat an Charger Daytona Fast and Furious Edition. It beats the Cater and beats 2 Ford GTs, which is very, very good. And finally today, the 695 Biposto goes into 95th for 1:32.143. Very good time for that little car, you know. It's not too far off a Focus RS or a Golf R32, which is pretty incredible when you consider that car is quite a ways down on power compared to those vehicles. Anyways, friends, as you can see, everything here today put in a pretty darn good time. The leaderboard has been shaken up quite significantly, so join me for next time, of course, where we'll have to find out if the leaderboard can get shaken up once again as we take a look at some rally cars. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching, friends. My name has been the Real Emile, and until next time, farewell.